First dates are supposed to be exciting. New beginnings, the chance to meet someone who could change your life forever. But sometimes the person sitting across from you at dinner, or the one driving you home, isn't who they seem to be. Sometimes a simple night out can spiral into something so dark, so terrifying, that you'll never forget it. Tonight we're diving into 9 true first date horror stories. Real encounters that prove love isn't always what you think it is. So before we begin, make sure you hit subscribe to Bleeding Walls and turn on the notification bell. This is just the start of the chilling journey we're taking together. And trust me, you don't want to miss the nightmares waiting for you. The Man at the Diner. Lena wasn't new to dating apps, but she was cautious. She always met in public, always told a friend where she'd be, and never gave out too many personal details. So when she matched with Jason, a man who seemed funny, polite, and attentive, she agreed to meet him for a late dinner at a small diner on the edge of town. The moment Jason walked in, Lena felt a flicker of unease. He looked like his pictures, but there was something in his eyes, a flatness, like a smile that never reached his gaze. Still, he greeted her warmly, slid into the booth across from her, and started talking. At first, the date felt normal. They ordered coffee, shared a plate of fries, and talked about work, family, and hobbies. But as the minutes passed, Jason's behavior grew unsettling. He leaned forward too closely, staring at her without blinking. He laughed at odd moments, sometimes before she even finished her sentences, as if he knew what she was about to say. Then came the questions. "Do you live alone?" he asked casually, twirling a fry between his fingers. Lena forced a smile. "I have a roommate." It was a lie, but one she always used for safety. Jason tilted his head, studying her. "You don't. You're alone." The certainty in his voice made her skin crawl. She laughed nervously, trying to change the subject. But he kept pressing. He asked about her schedule, what time she usually got home, whether her apartment had a back entrance. Each question was phrased lightly, like casual curiosity, but there was a sharp edge beneath it. When the check arrived, Lena reached for her wallet, but Jason placed his hand over hers. His skin was cold, clammy. "Don't worry," he said softly. "You'll pay me back later." That was the moment Lena decided to leave. She excused herself to the restroom, planning to text her friend to call her with an emergency. But when she returned, Jason was gone from the booth. Her heart lifted with relief. Maybe he had left. But then she saw it. From the reflection in the window, she caught sight of him outside, standing perfectly still by her car. Panic surged through her. How did he know which one was hers? She hadn't told him, hadn't even mentioned what. She drove. She stalled inside the diner, pretending to scroll through her phone. Jason didn't move. He just stood there, staring at her car, hands tucked into his jacket. The waitress noticed her tension and asked if everything was okay. Lena whispered that the man she was with was creeping her out. The waitress frowned and said she'd keep an eye out. After 10 agonizing minutes, Jason walked away into the darkness. Lena's relief was short-lived, because when she finally got the courage to leave, she found something waiting on her windshield. It was a napkin from the diner. Written in neat, careful handwriting were the words, "I know you're alone. I'll see you soon." Terrified, Lena drove straight to a friend's house and stayed there for the night. She blocked Jason on every platform and reported him to the app. For weeks, she checked over her shoulder constantly, jumping at every noise outside her apartment. One evening, as she was leaving work, she found another napkin tucked under her windshield wiper. This one was blank, except for a single drawn eye, staring. She never saw Jason again, but she never forgot the way his voice sounded when he said, "You don't. You're alone too." The walk in the park. Maya had been talking to Ryan online for almost a month before they finally agreed to meet. He seemed charming, always quick with a joke, attentive to her stories, and eager to hear about her day. Unlike other guys she'd spoken to, he didn't push for photos or late-night calls. He was patient, respectful. It almost felt too good to be true. They decided to meet in a park during the afternoon. Maya liked the idea. It felt safer than dinner in a secluded restaurant, and she loved being outdoors. When she arrived, Ryan was already waiting on a bench beneath a row of oak trees. He looked almost exactly like his profile picture, though thinner, paler. He greeted her warmly and suggested they take a walk. At first it was pleasant. The park was lively, children playing, couples walking dogs, joggers passing by. They strolled along the paved paths, chatting about books and movies. But as they walked, Ryan kept guiding her toward the quieter areas. When they reached a part of the park with fewer people, Maya began to feel uneasy. "Let's head back toward the fountain," she suggested. Ryan smiled but shook his head. "There's a spot I want to show you. It's special. You'll love it." Reluctantly, she followed as he led her off the main path, deeper into a wooded area. The air grew still, the sounds of laughter and chatter fading behind them. Maya's nerves prickled, but she didn't want to seem rude. Finally, Ryan stopped near a cluster of trees where the ground dipped slightly, forming a shallow hollow. "Here it is," he said softly. "This is where I like to come when I need to think." Maya glanced around. There was nothing remarkable about the place, just trees, shadows, and silence. Then she noticed something carved into the bark of one of the trees. Names, dozens of them, etched crudely, overlapping. Some were crossed out with deep gouges. Ryan followed her gaze and smiled faintly. "Those are my visitors," he said. Maya's stomach turned. "Visitors?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "People I've brought here. People who matter. And now you'll be part of it too." A chill ran through her. "I think I should head back," she said quickly. Ryan's smile faded. For a long moment he just stared at her, his eyes unreadable. Then he said almost casually, "Most people don't leave once they've been here." Her heart raced. She forced a laugh, trying to keep her voice steady. "Well, I'm not most people. Come on, let's go get some coffee." She turned to walk back toward the main path, but Ryan didn't move. She could feel his eyes on her back, the weight of his silence pressing against her. Finally, after what felt like forever, his footsteps followed. The moment they reached the crowded part of the park again, Maya pulled out her phone and pretended to get an urgent call. "I have to go," she said quickly, already walking toward the parking lot. Ryan didn't argue. He just watched her, that strange smile curling at the edges of his lips. When she reached her car, she glanced back one last time. Ryan was still standing by the trees, then unmoving, his pale face turned toward her. That night she couldn't stop thinking about the carved names. Were they just random scratches? Or had he truly brought others there before her? And if so, where were they now? Weeks later, Maya returned to the park in broad daylight, determined to put her fears to rest. She found the hollow again, heart pounding. The names were still there. But this time, she noticed something new. Her own name, freshly carved into the bark. 3. The House Invitation. Claire had been single for a while, and when she matched with Daniel on a dating app, she thought he seemed refreshingly normal. He was polite, witty, and shared her love for photography. After a week of messaging, he asked her out for coffee. The cafe was bright and busy, filled with the smell of roasted beans and the hum of conversation. Daniel was charming, well-dressed, attentive, and quick to laugh. Claire relaxed quickly, relieved that he wasn't one of the pushy or awkward types she'd met before. They talked for almost 2 hours, and by the end, she was surprised to find herself genuinely enjoying his company. As they left, Daniel hesitated and said, "You know, I live just a few blocks away. I've got some of my photos framed in my apartment. Want to come see them?" Claire's first instinct was to decline. She never went to someone's home on a first date. But his tone was so casual, his smile so warm, that she felt silly being overly suspicious. Against her better judgment, she agreed. Daniel's apartment was neat, almost too neat. Everything was perfectly arranged, books lined up by size, furniture positioned with meticulous symmetry, not a speck of dust anywhere. Claire complimented the decor, and Daniel laughed softly. "I like things in order. It makes me feel safe." He poured them each a glass of wine, then showed her his photos. They were striking images of cityscapes, nature, and candid portraits of strangers. But as Claire flipped through the framed prints, her stomach twisted. Several of the portraits weren't strangers at all. They were women, smiling, laughing, walking down streets, unaware they were being photographed, and one of them was her. Claire froze, staring at the image of herself sitting in the very same cafe they'd just left. She was reading a book, her head tilted slightly, completely unaware the photo was being taken. Her voice caught in her throat. When did you take this?" Daniel leaned closer, his smile unchanged. "A few weeks ago. You looked so peaceful. I knew I had to meet you." Claire's blood ran cold. You took this before we met on the app?" "Yes," Daniel said simply, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "I saw you there and I couldn't stop thinking about you. Then when I found your profile, I knew it was fate." Claire tried to steady her voice. That's a little much." Daniel's expression softened, almost hurt. "Don't say that. You don't understand. I've been watching you for weeks. I know you, better than anyone else does." Her pulse hammered in her ears. She set the photo down carefully, forcing a smile. "I should probably get going. It's getting late." Daniel's smile faded. For the first time, his eyes darkened. "No, stay a little longer. You're safe here. I've made everything perfect for you." He stepped closer, his body blocking the doorway. Panic surged through her. Thinking fast, she pretended to stumble, spilling her wine onto the pristine rug. Daniel gasped, crouching to blot the stain with frantic precision. Seizing the moment, Claire bolted for the door. She didn't stop running until she reached her car, her hands trembling as she fumbled for the keys. When she finally looked back, Daniel was standing in his apartment window, staring down at her with a calm, fixed smile. That night, she blocked his number, deleted the app, and double-checked every lock on her door. But weeks later, she received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single photograph of her, taken from outside her bedroom window. On the back, in neat handwriting, were the words, "I told you, you're safe with me." 4. The movie night. Emma was a film student, so when Matt, the guy she'd been chatting with for a couple of weeks, suggested a movie night for their first date, it sounded perfect. He said he knew a small independent theater in town that showed old classics, and Emma was excited. It felt unique, thoughtful, and much safer than being alone at someone's house. The evening started well enough. Matt was funny, confident without being cocky, and he seemed to know a lot about film. They got popcorn, found seats near the back of the theater, and the lights dimmed. The opening credits rolled, and for a while Emma felt herself relax. Maybe for once, she'd found someone worth her time. But midway through the movie, she noticed something strange. Matt wasn't watching the screen. He was watching her. At first, she thought she was imagining it. She shifted slightly, glanced over, and, sure enough, his eyes weren't on the film at all. They were fixed on her face, unblinking. Trying to brush it off, Emma whispered, "It's a good scene, right?" Matt smiled faintly but said nothing. He just kept staring. She tried to focus on the movie, but the intensity of his gaze made her skin crawl. Then slowly, his hand slid onto her lap. Not in a flirty or nervous way. There was no hesitation. It was deliberate, like he had been planning it from the moment the lights went down. Emma pushed his hand away, whispering firmly, "Not okay." Matt leaned in close, his lips brushing her ear. "I like watching you," he whispered. Her stomach turned. She grabbed her purse, whispering that she was going to the restroom, and hurried out of the theater. In the bathroom, she splashed cold water on her face, trying to steady her breathing. She told herself she would just leave, text him later to say it wasn't working out. But when she stepped back into the hallway, Matt was waiting. He stood against the wall, his face lit by the flickering glow of the theater sign. "You were gone a while," he said softly. "I was worried you left me." Emma forced a polite smile. "I think I'm going to head home. It's been a long day." Matt's expression didn't change. "No, the night isn't over." Something in his tone sent a shiver through her. She tried to walk past him, but he reached out, gently catching her wrist. His grip was firm, too firm. "Let go," she snapped, her voice sharper now. For a moment his eyes flickered with something dark, but then he smiled again, loosening his hold. "Sorry, I just didn't want it to end so soon." Emma left quickly, her pulse racing as she hurried to her car. She locked the doors, started the engine, and tried to shake the encounter off as just a bad date with a pushy guy. But when she glanced in her rearview mirror, her blood turned to ice. Matt was standing at the edge of the parking lot, illuminated by the streetlights. He wasn't moving, just watching. She drove away as fast as she could. For days afterward, she kept checking her phone, half expecting to see messages from him. When none came, she started to relax. Maybe he had gotten the hint. But a week later, she returned home from class to find something waiting on her porch. It was a ticket stub from the movie they had watched, neatly folded, with a note scrawled on the back. "Next time, don't run." I hate when people run. Emma never went to that theater again. 5. The ride home. Samantha had a rule: never get in a car with someone on a first date. But Aaron seemed different. He was polite, soft-spoken, and their dinner together had been surprisingly comfortable. He asked about her career, her family, even her favorite childhood memories, and he listened closely, too closely. By the end of the night, when Aaron offered her a ride home, Samantha hesitated. The restaurant was across town, and her rideshare app was glitching. Against her better judgment, she agreed. At first, the ride was uneventful. Aaron's car was spotless, smelling faintly of pine. Soft music played on the radio, and Samantha found herself relaxing into the seat. But soon she realized he wasn't taking the direct route to her neighborhood. "Hey," she said lightly, "I think you missed the turn." Aaron didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the road, hands tight on the steering wheel. Samantha tried again, this time more firmly. "My street was back there. Erin glanced at her briefly, then smiled. I know a shortcut. Her chest tightened. She watched as the familiar city lights faded, replaced by darker, quieter streets. The music on the radio seemed louder now, the notes pressing against her nerves. Where are we going? She demanded. Erin's smile never faltered. Somewhere better. You'll see panic prickled under her skin. She gripped her phone, debating whether to call someone, but Erin's eyes flicked to her hands. Don't, he said softly. Just trust me. The car slowed as he turned down a narrow road lined with trees. It was dark, deserted, no houses in sight. Samantha's heart pounded in her chest. I want to go home. Now, she said, her voice shaking. Erin finally looked at her fully, his expression calm, but his eyes burning with intensity. Why would you want to go back? Out here, it's just us. No one to interrupt Samantha's instincts screamed at her. She fumbled for the door handle, but the locks clicked down automatically. Erin chuckled. Don't worry, you'll like it where we're going. Her terror sharpened into survival. With shaking hands, she pretended to adjust her seatbelt, then suddenly slammed her elbow into the side of his head. The car swerved, tires screeching. In the chaos, she yanked the lock up, threw the door open, and tumbled out onto the side of the road. She hit the ground hard, scraping her knees, but adrenaline kept her moving. She sprinted into the trees as Erin's car screeched to a stop behind her. His voice followed, calm but chilling. You'll regret this, Samantha. Branches tore at her arms as she ran blindly through the dark. She didn't stop until she saw headlights approaching from another road. Bursting out of the woods, she waved, frantically, and a passing driver stopped to help. By the time the police arrived, Erin and his car were gone. For weeks, Samantha lived in fear, jumping at every sound outside her apartment. Then one morning, she found something on her doorstep, a small toy car, the same model as Erin's, its windows blacked out. Taped to the roof was a note. Next time, don't fight me. We'll finish our drive. She never heard from him again, but every time she drives at night, Samantha checks her mirrors constantly, terrified she'll see those headlights behind her once more. Siki. The dinner guest Maya had been talking to Evan online for a couple of months before they finally agreed to meet in person. He was charming over messages, always thoughtful, never pushy, and his sense of humor matched hers perfectly. When he suggested he cook dinner for her at his apartment instead of going to a restaurant, Maya was hesitant. A home-cooked meal on a first date wasn't her usual style, but Evan assured her he loved cooking and wanted to impress her. Against her better judgment, she agreed. When she arrived, his apartment was spotless. Warm lighting, candles on the table, soft music playing. He welcomed her with a smile and handed her a glass of wine, before disappearing into the kitchen to check on the food. The atmosphere was disarming, almost too perfect, but Maya pushed her doubts aside. Maybe this was just what dating was supposed to feel like. The dinner was delicious. Evan talked animatedly about his hobbies, his travels, and his love of photography. Maya laughed more than she had in weeks, feeling a surprising comfort around him. But as the night wore on, she began to notice strange details. The photos on his wall weren't landscapes or family pictures. They were portraits of women, dozens of them, all different women, each framed neatly, their faces captured in candid moments, smiling, frowning, some even asleep. Maya froze as her eyes traveled along the wall. The women weren't looking at the camera in any of them. They looked unaware. "Do you like them?" Evan asked suddenly, his voice close to her ear. She jumped, realizing he'd moved silently behind her. "They're interesting," she said carefully. They're beautiful, Evan corrected, his eyes locked on the photos. Every one of them. I only take pictures of women who inspire me, women who are worth remembering. Something about the way he said it sent a chill through her. Maya forced a laugh, trying to mask her unease. Well, they definitely make an impression. Evan smiled. Good. That's the point. She excused herself to the bathroom, her hands trembling. The small hallway was lined with more frames, each one showing a woman in a different setting. But what made her stomach lurch was the newest photo at the end of the hall. It was her, taken just days earlier when she was leaving her office building, unaware anyone was watching. Her heart pounded. She quickly locked the bathroom door, breathing hard. She pulled out her phone, typing a message to a friend to call her in 5 minutes with an emergency. But before she could hit send, the lights in the bathroom flickered and went out. Evan's voice came softly through the door. You don't need to be afraid, Maya. I've been waiting for you. You're the most beautiful of all. Her hands shook violently as she unlocked the window above the toilet and pushed it open. It was a tight squeeze, but adrenaline drove her through. She dropped into the alley behind the building, scraping her arms, and then ran without looking back. She didn't stop until she was several blocks away, where she finally called the police. They searched Evan's apartment that night, but he was gone. Weeks later, Maya received a package with no return address. Inside was a single photo, her sitting at her kitchen table, eating breakfast. The picture had been taken through her window. On the back, in neat handwriting, were the words, "Dinner was wonderful. Next time, dessert 7. The woods walk. Lena had always loved nature, so when Josh suggested they go for a walk through a nearby forest preserve for their first date, she thought it sounded refreshing. It was early autumn, the leaves turning brilliant shades of red and gold, the air crisp but comfortable. Josh brought coffee in a thermos, and at first, everything felt easy. They laughed, shared stories, and took photos of the trails. The deeper they walked, however, the quieter Josh became. His cheerful banter slowed until he was barely speaking at all. Instead, he kept glancing at her in a way that made her uneasy, like he was studying her rather than simply enjoying her company. At one point, Lena tried to lighten the mood. So, do you take all your first dates on long hikes in the woods? She joked. Josh's lips curled into a smile, but his answer was unsettling. Only the ones who seem strong enough. Her laughter died in her throat. Strong enough for what? He didn't answer. He just kept walking, his pace quickening slightly. They had been out for nearly an hour when Lena realized she no longer recognized the trail. She glanced around nervously. Hey, do you know where we are? I think we passed this area already. Josh stopped suddenly and turned to face her. His expression was calm, but his eyes were dark, unreadable. Don't worry. I know these woods better than anyone. That should have reassured her, but instead it made her chest tighten. Something in his tone felt off. Lena pulled out her phone to check the map, but there was no signal. Her stomach dropped. Josh noticed and smiled faintly. No service out here. It's just us. She forced a laugh. Okay, but seriously, I'd like to head back. Josh tilted his head, almost like he was studying prey. Why would you want to leave? We've got all the time in the world. Out here, no one bothers us. No one even knows where we are. Her heart pounded. She started to step backward, but Josh closed the distance between them in a few strides. He reached out, brushing his hand against her hair. You're exactly like I imagined, he whispered. Every instinct screamed at her. She shoved his arm away and bolted down the trail, branches whipping at her face as she ran blindly. Behind her, Josh's footsteps thundered against the dirt, his voice echoing through the trees. "Don't run, Lena. You'll get lost." She didn't look back. She just kept running until she saw a break in the trees and burst into a clearing near a small parking lot. A couple was unloading a picnic basket from their car, and Lena sprinted toward them, sobbing. When she turned, Josh was gone. The police searched the woods, but they found nothing. No sign of him, no trace of where he might have gone. His dating profile vanished the next day, like he had never existed. Weeks later, Lena returned to her own car after work and found something stuck under the windshield wiper. It was a single leaf from the forest, its edges pressed flat, with words written across it in black ink. "You didn't finish the walk." 8. The basement bar. Rachel loved the idea of something different for a first date. So when Tyler suggested meeting at a hidden speakeasy bar in the basement of an old building downtown, she thought it sounded adventurous. The place had no sign outside, just a steel door and a staircase leading down into dim light. Tyler met her at the entrance with a broad smile, his hand brushing against the small of her back as he led her downstairs. The bar was dark, with flickering candles on tables and soft jazz playing in the background. At first, Rachel was charmed. It felt secret, special, like stepping into another world. Tyler ordered them drinks, and they talked for an hour. He was intelligent, funny, and unusually attentive. But the longer they sat, the more Rachel realized his attention wasn't flattering. It was suffocating. Whenever she looked away, his eyes bored into her, watching every movement she made. When she shifted in her seat, his hand twitched, as though he didn't want her to move even an inch farther from him. Trying to excuse herself, Rachel stood and said she was going to the restroom. Tyler immediately offered to show her the way. She laughed nervously, insisting she could find it herself, but he followed anyway, his footsteps heavy behind her down the narrow hall. The restroom was old, with peeling paint and a humming light above the mirror. Rachel splashed cold water on her face, telling herself she was being paranoid. But when she opened the door, Tyler was waiting. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his smile too wide. "You were gone a while," he said softly. Rachel forced a chuckle. "Just washing up. Anyway, I think I'm going to head out. It's getting late." Tyler's smile faltered. "No, the night's just starting." He stepped closer, his body blocking the hallway. Rachel's pulse spiked. "Please, move," she said firmly. Instead, Tyler tilted his head, studying her. "Do you know why I like this bar? It's underground, no windows, only one way in and one way out." Her stomach dropped. She shoved past him, breaking into a run. She rushed back into the main bar, but something was off. The tables were empty. The bartender was gone. The soft jazz still played, but the room was deserted. Rachel spun around, and Tyler was there, calmly locking the heavy steel door at the top of the stairs. The sound of the bolt sliding shut echoed like a gunshot. She bolted for the back of the room, searching desperately for another exit. Tyler didn't chase her. He just watched, smiling faintly, as though enjoying her panic. "No one can hear you down here," he said. "That's why I love it." Rachel's hands shook as she yanked open a side door and stumbled into what looked like a storage room. Rows of shelves lined the walls, bottles, cleaning supplies, boxes. But in the corner was something that froze her blood. A pile of purses, women's purses, stacked neatly. Next to them a row of shoes. Her breath caught in her throat. Behind her, Tyler's voice was calm, almost soothing. "You'll fit right in." Summoning every ounce of strength, Rachel grabbed a heavy glass bottle from the shelf and hurled it at his head. It shattered against the wall, startling him just long enough for her to dart past. She scrambled up the staircase, slamming against the steel door. By some miracle, the lock gave way, and she burst into the cool night air. She didn't stop running until she was blocks away. When she finally looked back, the door to the bar was closed, no sign it had ever been opened. The next day, she tried to bring the police to the location. But the basement was empty. No bar, no tables, no bartender. Just a dusty, unused storage space. That night, Rachel found an envelope slipped under her apartment door. Inside was one of the purses she'd seen in the basement. It wasn't hers, but the note attached was written in neat, careful handwriting. Yours will be next. 9. The locked door. Nina wasn't the type to agree to blind dates, but her co-worker had been insistent. He's normal, her friend promised. Sweet, polite, safe. Just give him a chance. That's how Nina found herself meeting Chris at a cozy Italian restaurant on a Friday night. At first, everything seemed fine. Chris was tall, soft-spoken, and attentive in a way that bordered on flattering. He asked about her favorite foods, her dreams, even her worst fears. She laughed nervously at the last question, brushing it off, but he leaned in closer, his expression deadly serious. I think it's important to know someone's fears, he said softly. That way you can protect them. The way he said it made the hair rise on her arms. Dinner ended, and Chris offered to drive her home. Nina declined, sticking to her rule about never letting a stranger know where she lived. He looked disappointed but didn't push, which eased her nerves. Outside, the rain had started pouring, and when Nina realized her phone battery had died, Chris offered her a ride just to the bus station. Against her better judgment, she agreed. At first, the ride was uneventful. The rain hammered the windshield, the wipers squeaking in rhythm. But soon Nina realized they weren't heading toward the station. The streets grew darker, quieter, until they were driving through an industrial part of town filled with abandoned warehouses. I think you missed the turn, she said, her voice tight. Chris smiled faintly, his eyes fixed on the road. No, I didn't. Her chest tightened. Where are we going? He didn't answer. He just kept driving. Finally, the car slowed in front of a crumbling brick building. Chris cut the engine and turned to face her. His expression was calm, almost tender. I just want to show you something. Then I'll take you home. Nina's hands trembled as she reached for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The locks were down. Chris leaned closer, lowering his voice. Don't be scared. You'll understand soon. Before he could touch her, she grabbed her purse and slammed it into his face. He shouted, clutching his nose, and in the chaos, she managed to pull up the lock, throw the door open, and stumble into the rain. She ran blindly, splashing through puddles, until she reached the street. A passing car stopped, and the driver called the police. When they returned to the warehouse, Chris and his car were gone. For weeks, Nina tried to convince herself it was over. But then small things started happening. Her apartment door would be unlocked when she was certain she'd locked it. Items on her shelves moved slightly out of place, and one night as she climbed into bed, she noticed something that made her stomach drop. Her phone, fully charged this time, was lying on her nightstand. On the screen was a photo of her, asleep in that very bed. On the pillow next to her was a folded piece of paper. Her hands shook as she opened it. It was written in neat, careful handwriting. Now, I know your worst fear.